My stepmom left my dad after I refused to let her walk me down the aisle, and now he has a shocking confession before my wedding. I'm Lily, a 28-year-old woman who will marry her fiancé Richard, a 30-year-old man, in 3 months. To comprehend my current circumstances, I must return to my childhood. My parents, Claire, 53F, and Tom, 55M, met at college and married young. They had me when they were both 25, and for the first 10 years of my existence, we seemed like the ideal family. I remember spending weekends at my grandparents' lake house, where Dad taught me how to fish while Mom made lunches. Every Friday, we had family game night, and my parents took turns reading me bedtime stories. It wasn't perfect, they argued like any couple, but I always felt loved and secure. Everything changed when I was 10. Dad began working late more frequently, and Mom appeared increasingly tense and sad. I overheard arguments about someone named Tanya, but I had no idea what was going on. Then, one day, I returned home from school to find Mom crying in the kitchen. She sat me down and told me that Dad had an affair with his coworker, Tanya, 48F, and they were getting divorced. The following few months were a jumble of tears, conflicts, and bewilderment. Dad moved out, and I remember being furious with him for hurting Mom and splitting up our family. The divorce was messy and traumatic. There were intense debates over custody and property partition. I recall sitting outside the courtroom during one of their sessions, feeling disoriented and terrified. In the end, Mom received primary custody, with Dad receiving visits every other weekend. At first, I was hesitant to spend time with Dad. I was angry and sad, and I did not want to leave Mom alone. Mom, despite her own anguish, pushed me to give Dad another chance. She informed me, "Your father made a mistake, but he still loves you. It's fine to adore him too." Gradually, I began to like spending weekends with Dad. He'd take me to the movies, show me how to cook, badly, and we'd have lengthy discussions about school and my friends. Things became more problematic when Dad declared 2 years after the divorce that he was marrying Tanya. Tanya and I met for the first time at a dinner Dad had arranged. She appeared pleasant enough, bringing me a gift, a diary with my name embossed on it, and inquiring about my interests. But I couldn't get rid of the idea that she was the reason my family had come apart. Tanya worked hard to establish a bond with me after Dad and Tanya married. She was constantly buying me gifts, clothes, books, art supplies, and recommending mother-daughter activities such as spa days or cooking classes. However, her efforts felt forced to me, and I was never comfortable around her. Part of it was out of loyalty to my mother, and part of it was because Tanya appeared to be attempting to replace her. As I approached adolescence, my connection with Dad and Tanya deteriorated. They would frequently make disparaging remarks about Mom, such as, "It's a shame your mother is so bitter," or, "If only your mother could move on like we have." These statements bothered me because I understood how hard Mom worked to co-parent harmoniously. My mother, on the other hand, never spoke negatively about Dad or Tanya in front of me. She listened to my complaints but always pushed me to give them another shot. "They're not perfect," she'd continue, "but they try. It's acceptable to have many relationships with different people in your life." Tanya became pregnant when I was 16 years old. Dad was overjoyed, continually mentioning how happy he was to have a real family, now. Those words struck deep because they made me feel like I wasn't enough for him. Like I was a relic of his past rather than an important part of his new existence. Tanya had a miscarriage at 20 weeks. It was a tough time for them, and I recall feeling a combination of anguish for their loss and guilty relief that I would not be replaced by a new baby. Dad informed me that Tanya would require additional love and support from me, which put a lot of strain on me at a time when I was already dealing with usual teenage concerns and the lingering consequences from the divorce. Tanya's attachment to me grew stronger following the miscarriage. She began introducing me to everyone as her daughter, which made me very uncomfortable. She also started urging me to call her Mom, something I flatly refused to do. This resulted in several arguments, with Dad always siding with Tanya and accusing me of being insensitive to her feelings. During this time, my relationship with my mother remained solid. She was my rock, always willing to listen without judgment and provide support without pressuring. She encouraged me to pursue my interests, which led to me joining the school newspaper and later studying journalism in college. I met Richard in college. We were both writing for the campus paper and bonded over our shared interest in investigative reporting. Richard's family was much easier than mine. His parents were still happily married and he had 2 younger siblings. I was initially cautious to let him inside my delicate family relationships, but his tolerance and understanding allowed me to open up. All of these previous concerns have finally come to a head as we prepare our wedding. I have chosen to ask my mother to walk me down the aisle. She's been my steadfast supporter, role model, and greatest friend. When I told Dad and Tanya about my decision, Tanya fell into tears and Dad became enraged. They told me I was being selfish and that Tanya should also lead me down the aisle because she had been in my life for so long. I refused, stating that my mother is my soul mother and the person I want at my side on my wedding day. This sparked a heated dispute, with Dad threatening not to attend the wedding if Tanya wasn't given a particular position. He mentioned all the times Tanya tried to be there for me, the presents she bought, the activities she planned, but to me, such things pale in contrast to my mother's unwavering love and support. Tanya blamed me of never giving her a chance and claimed that after all these years, she considered me her own daughter. She brought up her miscarriage again, expressing how difficult it had been to lose a baby and then have her stepdaughter reject her. I understand that the miscarriage was difficult for her, but I don't think it's appropriate to use it as emotional leverage against me. I'm sticking to my decision, but now I'm wondering if I'm being too severe. Richard fully supports me, saying that it is our wedding and we should do whatever feels right to us. However, some of my extended family members believe I should make a compromise to keep the peace. Part of me feels bad for hurting Tanya's feelings, but a larger part of me is upset that Dad and Tanya are attempting to make my wedding about them. I've spent years attempting to negotiate this blended family arrangement, often at the price of my own emotions. I want my wedding day to be a celebration of love, not a battleground for old family feuds. Am I an asshole for refusing to have my stepmother lead me down the aisle? Should I stick to my decision or seek a compromise? Update 1. It's been a month since my previous post, and a lot has changed. First and foremost, I'd want to thank everyone for their encouraging words. They greatly increased my confidence in my decision. After the wedding quarrel, my father and Tanya stopped communicating to me for a few weeks. It was a stressful situation, and I found myself continually checking my phone, half expecting and half fearing a message from them. Richard was quite helpful at this time, telling me that it was acceptable to prioritize my own sentiments and that I was not responsible for controlling their emotions. Tanya called me unexpectedly, weeping. She apologized for pressing me throughout the years and stated that she simply wanted to be close to me. Her voice sounded truly sorry, and for a little time, I felt a ray of optimism that we might be able to go forward. She asked if we could meet for coffee to talk things over, and after some hesitation, I accepted, thinking it would be a good opportunity to clear the air before the wedding. We met in a neighborhood cafe that I used to frequent in college. It was weird to be seated across from Tanya in a setting that brought back memories of study sessions with friends and early dates with Richard. At first, everything appeared to be going well. Tanya was surprisingly sympathetic, even saying she accepted my choice to have my mother follow me down the aisle. She told my father some anecdotes about her own wedding, including how scared she was and how she wished she had a closer relationship with her stepmother. I found myself softening slightly, viewing her as a person with her own troubles and fears rather than the woman who had ended my parents' marriage. However, things took a turn when she mentioned that she and my father were thinking about renewing their vows next year. At first, I assumed she was just discussing their plans, but then she dropped a bombshell. She offered that I walk her down the aisle at their vow renewal ceremony to balance things out. This suggestion stunned me. It felt like she was attempting to establish a quid pro quo, as if my wedding and their vow renewal were somehow interchangeable. I explained that a daughter's wedding is not the same as a vow renewal. Tanya became agitated and accused me of not giving her a chance. She mentioned the miscarriage again, explaining how difficult it had been and how she had hoped that having a kid would bring our family closer together. She stated that losing the baby was especially devastating since she believed she had missed her chance to actually be a mother. I attempted to be empathetic, recalling how awful that time had been for everyone, but I also stated that her death, while tragic, did not require me to regard her as my mother. I said that I had my own complicated thoughts at the time, feeling both sad for their loss and pleased that I would not be replaced. The conversation rapidly degenerated from there. Tanya accused me of being cold-hearted and ungrateful for everything she had attempted to do for me over time. She mentioned every gift she had ever given me and every outing she had planned, as if keeping track of her attempts at motherhood. I emphasized that genuine connection and respect for limits are what sustain relationships, not gifts and forced outings. In the heat of the moment, I uttered something I had been keeping quiet for years. I informed Tanya that, while I was sad for her loss, I was tired of her using the miscarriage as emotional leverage. I said it wasn't fair to put the responsibility of her unfulfilled maternal urges on me, especially when I was only a teenager trying to deal with my own familial tragedy. Tanya burst into tears and walked out of the cafe, leaving me sitting there, feeling guilty, angry, and relieved that I had finally spoken my actual sentiments. As I sat there trying to digest what had just transpired, I couldn't help but think about how this cafe, which had once held wonderful memories, would now be forever connected with this awful confrontation. My father called me later that evening, enraged. He claimed I had been harsh to Tanya and owed her an apology. He accused me of being selfish and ungrateful, claiming that Tanya had always wanted to love me. When I tried to explain my side of the story, he interrupted me, stating that if I couldn't accept Tanya as my mother, perhaps I shouldn't consider him my father anymore. Those remarks struck me hard. Despite our disagreements throughout the years, I never questioned that my father loved me. But in that moment it felt like he was choosing Tanya above me, just like he had done years before when he abandoned our family for her. I am hurt and outraged, but I am also more certain than ever in my decision. Richard has been wonderfully supportive throughout this process, hugging me when I cry and assuring me that I have every right to set boundaries. We're going forward with our wedding plans, aiming to create a day that celebrates our love and the family we're starting together. My mother has also been fantastic. When I told her what had happened, she listened without judgment and offered consolation without attempting to influence my decision. She reminded me that family connections are complex and that it is acceptable to prioritize my own emotional well-being. After a few days of thought, I've decided to send my father and Tanya a farewell message. In it, I intend to express my emotions and boundaries clearly. I want to make it clear that, while I am open to having a connection with them, it must be on terms that respect my sentiments and my relationship with my mother. I'll tell them that if they can't accept it, they won't be invited to the wedding. As I sit here writing this message, I can't help but feel a mixture of loss and relief. It isn't the relationship I hope I could have with my father and stepmother, but it's the healthiest I can provide right now. Am I doing the right thing, or am I being overly harsh and potentially excluding them from this key day in my life? Update 2. Another month has passed, and things have only gotten more confusing. After I wrote a message to my father and Tanya describing my feelings and boundaries, I didn't hear from them for a few weeks. The silence provided both relief and anxiety. I tried to concentrate on wedding planning, finalizing the menu, having clothing fittings with my mother and working on our vows with Richard, but the unresolved problem with my father and Tanya remained in the back of my mind. Then, last Saturday, my father arrived to my flat unannounced. I was in the process of addressing invitations with Richard when the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, I was surprised to see my father standing there, fatigued and upset. I invited him in, more by surprise than anything else. Richard, sensing the tension, excused himself to give us some peace, but not before gently caressing my hand. When we were alone, Dad broke down. He informed me that Tanya had left him. Tanya apparently had a breakdown following our disagreement at the coffee shop and my message. She informed my father she couldn't take the rejection longer and needed to find herself. She packed her luggage and left to reside with her sister in another state. As I listened to my father pour out his heart, I was overcome with emotion. Part of me felt justified. Hadn't I been warning Tanya for years that her relationship to me was unhealthy? But another part of me felt guilty. Had my inability to accept her as a mother figure truly caused so much pain? Dad was a mess, alternately apologizing to me and blaming me for Tanya's departure. He explained that he didn't know how to solve things and asked if I would try family therapy with him and Tanya. The concept made me uncomfortable. I told him I wasn't prepared for that, especially since Tanya had left him and I wasn't sure where we all stood. Then my father revealed another bombshell. He admitted that years ago, when Tanya miscarried, they had been trying for a baby because Tanya believed it would help me accept her as a mother figure. He admitted that they were wrong to try to replace me or push a mother-daughter bond. This information surprised me. It explained a lot about their behavior over the years, including the increased pressure to bond with Tanya, the continuous comparisons to a real family, and the guilt-tripping following the miscarriage. However, it also made me angry. I felt manipulated, like my feelings had been ignored in their effort to build their ideal family. I told my father I needed time to comprehend everything and begged him to go. I was overwhelmed as I closed the door behind him. I contacted my mom because I needed her calm presence and smart guidance. She listened attentively as I explained everything, then suggested that I take some time to seriously consider what I want my relationship with my father and Tanya to look like in the future. Now I'm feeling conflicted. On the one hand, I feel vindicated in my decision to maintain boundaries with Tanya. Her leaving my father appears to demonstrate that her attachment to me was motivated more by her selfish desires than real concern for me. On the other side, I feel horrible for my father, who appears truly sorry and bewildered. Richard believes I should keep my boundaries, but be open to repairing a connection with my father over time. He pointed out that, while my father's confession regarding the pregnancy attempt was hard to hear, it was also a step forward in honesty that we had not experienced previously. My mother, when I told her what had transpired, was surprisingly sympathetic to my father. She believes that when individuals are thirsty for affection and acceptance, They can make serious blunders. She reminded me of how young my father was when they had me, and how he may have been attempting to recreate the family life he believed he had lost. The wedding is now only a month away, and I'm not sure what to do about my father's invitation. Should I still invite him, giving him the opportunity to be a part of this special day? Should I contact Tanya now that I understand her motivations? Should I focus on my own happiness while they deal with their problems? As I sit here, staring at the stack of unsent invites, I understand that this decision is about more than the wedding. It's about the future relationship I desire with my father and whether Tanya has a role in my life. It's about striking a balance between compassion and self-protection, as well as determining what forgiveness looks like in a circumstance where the wounds are deep. Update 3. The wedding was last weekend, and I wanted to provide a last update on how everything worked out. After considerable thought and several long conversations with Richard and my mother, I decided to keep my father's invitation to the wedding open, but I made it plain that it was only for him and not Tanya. I sent him a long email explaining my decision. I informed him that I was willing to work on our relationship, but it would take time, and that he needed to respect my boundaries. I also conveyed my wish that he would attend the wedding to celebrate this special day in my life, but I understood if he felt unable to attend without Tanya. To my amazement, my father accepted these terms. He responded to my email again, apologizing for everything and expressing his want to be present on my wedding day. He also stated that he and Tanya were still separated, and that he was beginning to see how much their relationship had influenced me over the years. Last-minute preparations dominated the week leading up to the wedding. My mother was an unwavering source of support, assisting with everything from floral arrangements to easing my pre-wedding nerves. Richard's family visited from out of town, and witnessing how well they got along with my mother made me happy for the loving, drama-free family I would marry into. On the wedding day, I was a ball of nervousness and excitement as my mother helped me into my dress. We both shed tears as she told me how proud she was of the lady I'd become and how glad she was that Richard and I had met. It was a memory I'll keep forever. The ceremony was amazing. Walking down the aisle with my mother by my side felt just beautiful. I noticed my father seated in one of the front rows, appearing distraught yet smiling when our gazes met. Richard's reaction when he saw me go down the aisle was all I had hoped for and more. During the reception, I was busy welcoming visitors and enjoying the festivities with Richard, but I noticed my father looking sad and lonely at moments. He put on a brave face whenever he noticed me gazing. To my amazement, he had a cordial chat with my mother at one point. They were never going to be friends, but the fact that they could be in the same room without causing tension was a relief. After the wedding, after things had settled down a little, my father and I had a long conversation. He apologized once more for everything and promised to try harder to be a good father. He recognized that he had made numerous mistakes, particularly in attempting to force a connection between Tanya and myself. He also informed me that Tanya had decided to stay with her sister indefinitely, and they were discussing a trial separation. I'm cautiously enthusiastic about mending my relationship with my father. We've decided to start with monthly dinners for just the two of us to reconnect without pressure. It won't be easy, and there'll be a lot of pain to deal with, but I'm willing to try. I chose not to contact Tanya right now. I believe we both require time and space to recover and move forward. Maybe eventually we'll be able to talk about everything that happened, but for now, I'm focused on my new life with Richard and mending my relationship with my father. This entire experience has been a roller coaster, but I'm glad I held my ground. I'm starting my married life with a better awareness of my family dynamics and more firm limits. The wedding proved to be more than simply a celebration of my love for Richard. It also marked a fresh beginning in my relationship with my parents. Richard and I are finally settling into married life, and it feels great to face the future together, knowing we can deal with anything that comes our way. We are planning a belated honeymoon to Japan next month, which we are both looking forward to. Thank you to everyone who helped me on this journey. Your guidance and encouragement helped me get through this terrible situation and begin this new chapter in my life on a positive note. It won't be easy, and there'll be a lot of pain to deal with, but I'm willing to try.
Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.